What happens when a live television interview spirals so far out of control that even the hosts, the crew, and the audience forget they're on camera? Subscribe to Stage View and like and comment right now so you never miss these explosive behind-the-curtain moments. Because what you're about to hear is one of the most shocking exchanges ever captured on daytime TV. The lights above the set of The View buzzed faintly, the hum almost lost beneath the chatter of a studio audience who had no idea what the next 18 minutes would become. Producers hurried across the glossy floor, adjusting cables, whispering last-second cues, and throwing quick glances toward the backstage corridor where Daniel Radcliffe stood alone, shoulders tense, jaw set, his fingers twisting once, twice, around the ring on his right hand. He'd worn that ring since his early 20s. Whenever interviews felt uncomfortable, he'd spin it like a nervous wheel. Today, he wasn't spinning it out of nerves. He was spinning it to keep himself from saying something he'd regret. A stagehand approached him, offering a polite smile. "You're on in 90 seconds, Mr. Radcliffe." He nodded, barely listening, his attention fixed on the faint echoes of laughter drifting from the studio. He could hear Joy Behar's voice, sharp, playful, already building the energy for his segment. He closed his eyes. Please don't let her go there today, he thought. Not today. The cameras rolled back to the panel. Joy sat in her usual seat, red glasses perched low on her nose, shuffling the blue cards she pretended to read, but almost never used. Beside her sat Whoopi, giving the audience a knowing look as she teased the upcoming segment. Sunny Hostin leaned forward with a polished grin, and Sarah Haynes bounced lightly in her chair, visibly excited. "We've got a very, very special guest today," Joy announced, her voice dipping with dramatic flair. Two-time Tony winner, global icon, and someone who has managed to survive the chaos of childhood fame better than most adults survive a Monday morning. The audience laughed on cue. Joy smirked. "Give it up for Daniel Radcliffe." The doors slid open, and Daniel emerged into the light. The applause was immediate, warm, almost overwhelmingly so, bouncing off the studio walls with a force that jolted him into a smile he didn't entirely feel. He walked forward, shaking Joy's hand first. Her grip was firm, firmer than he expected, and he noticed something strange in the way she held eye contact with him. There was tension there. Not curiosity, not excitement, something else. He pushed the thought aside and took his seat. "Daniel," Joy began, leaning back in her chair, "you've been busy lately." He let out a soft laugh, nodding. "It's been a good year. Exhausting, but good." "Exhausting is putting it mildly," Sarah chimed in. "I mean, you're doing Merrily We Roll Along, you're filming, you're producing, you're human." Daniel finished with a playful shrug, earning a wave of laughter from the audience. But Joy wasn't laughing. She tapped the stack of cards against the table. "Speaking of being human," she said, "you've been opening up more in interviews lately. Getting personal." She paused, just long enough for the tone to shift. "Some people think you're revealing too much." Daniel felt the air inside his lungs stall. There it was, the thing he'd hoped she wouldn't say. He kept his expression steady. "I'm just being honest," he replied. "I've learned that honesty helps." "Helps what?" Joy asked, tilting her head. "Public image? Career longevity." Whoopi shot her a side eye. "Joy." But Joy continued. "I'm only asking because, well, the public loves you. And sometimes when people love you, you feel you owe them something. You know? Honesty, vulnerability, trauma, all wrapped into a neat little press tour." The studio audience quieted. Joy's words didn't land like a joke. They landed like an accusation. Daniel shifted in his seat. "I share what I choose to share," he said, voice low but steady. "Nothing more." Joy pursed her lips. "But you've said some things recently about your childhood, your struggles, the pressure of being a global symbol for millions of kids," that frankly raised eyebrows. "And some people are wondering." She held up the blue card, waving it slightly as if it contained the truth. "Is Daniel Radcliffe okay?" A few scattered murmurs rippled through the audience. Daniel's eyes flickered to the camera, the red tally light glowing like an unblinking witness, then back to Joy. "I'm fine," he said softly. "But that's not really why I'm here today." "Isn't it?" Joy replied. The words struck him like a sudden gust. "Joy," Sunny cut in with a raised hand. "Daniel's here to talk about the new production, not." "He'll get to that," Joy said sharply. "But before we go all Broadway sunshine, I'm curious about the darker comments he's made recently." Whoopi leaned toward Daniel. "You don't have to answer anything you're not comfortable with." But Daniel straightened. He'd been avoiding this conversation for weeks. Maybe it was time. Look, he began, exhaling slowly. I've talked about the pressures of fame because it shaped me. Not to seek pity. Not to shock people. Just to be honest. I don't want to pretend everything was perfect when it wasn't. Joy's eyes narrowed. But do you think talking about it so openly harms the people who helped you become who you are? Daniel's heart dropped. Are we really doing this? He whispered. Joy didn't blink. You've made some comments about your parents, she said. About the people who guided your childhood, the decisions they made, the environment you grew up in. Do you regret saying those things? The audience was still. Too still. Daniel's jaw tightened. No, he said. Because they were true. Joy leaned in, voice sharp. Even if those truths paint your parents in a negative light, even if they weren't here to defend themselves. Something heated flashed through Daniel's chest, a storm surging behind his ribs. His hands clenched together in his lap. I love my parents, he said firmly. And they know that. But love doesn't mean pretending everything was perfect. It means acknowledging the truth. So the truth, Joy pressed, is that they failed you? A gasp broke through the studio. A real gasp. Even Joy seemed to realize, too late, that the question had crossed a line. Daniel sat back slowly, almost mechanically, as if his body was moving without permission. His eyes burned, not with tears, but with a fury he struggled to contain. He chuckled softly, a short, humorless sound that made the entire room feel colder. You know, he began, staring at Joy with a stillness that felt dangerous. It's interesting. People say they want honesty. They celebrate it, until it makes them uncomfortable. Joy opened her mouth, but he kept going. And you want a moment. A clip. Something messy to go viral on social media, so people can argue about it while eating lunch. You don't actually care about my parents, Joy, or my well-being. You care about the story. A murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. Someone even clapped before quickly realizing the tension and lowering their hands. Joy bristled. That's unfair, Daniel. No, he said, leaning forward, voice colder now. What's unfair is pretending you're concerned when really you're just entertained. Whoopi tried to redirect. Okay, let's. But Daniel wasn't done. For years, he continued, I stayed quiet when people asked about my childhood. I carried things alone. I smiled, I joked, I pretended. And when I finally decided to be honest, not for publicity, not for profit, but for myself, suddenly that honesty becomes ammunition for people like you. Joy shifted in her seat. The confidence in her posture faltered. Daniel, You asked if my parents failed me, he said quietly. Do you know how invasive that is? How deeply personal? He paused. But since you asked, no. They didn't fail me. They were doing their best in a world that none of us understood. And I'm grateful for them. But I'm also allowed to talk about what hurt. Because pretending it didn't doesn't help anyone. The audience applauded this time, loudly, defiantly, and Joy flinched as if the sound physically struck her. But Daniel wasn't speaking to the audience. He wasn't even speaking to Joy. He was speaking to the cameras, to the world watching. The room vibrated with a tension that felt alive, almost electric. The producers behind the glass scrambled, whispering frantically into headsets, arguing whether to cut to commercial but terrified of losing the moment. And then Joy said something that would change the entire interview. So, she began slowly, you're saying your parents were victims too? That they were just swept up in the fame machine with you? Daniel froze. Something in her tone, a note of cynicism, of mockery, snapped whatever fragile restraint he had left. He stared at her. Really stared. And for the first time, Joy looked unsettled. He spoke softly, but every word landed with the weight of a hammer. I think, he said, that you're not actually listening to me. Joy blinked, caught off guard. Excuse me? You're twisting my words, Daniel continued. You're creating a narrative you decided on before I even walked out here. That's not. Yes, it is, he cut in. You're not asking questions. You're cornering me. And I'm tired of pretending that's okay. The audience murmured again, louder this time, a wave of unease rolling from seat to seat. Joy straightened, forcing a brittle smile. Daniel, this is the view. We have tough conversations. He leaned back, arms folding. No, he said. You have performative conversations. There's a difference. Even Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. Joy, caught between anger and embarrassment, let out a sharp inhale. If you think this is performative, why did you agree to come here? Daniel didn't hesitate. Because I forgot, he said, that sometimes honesty is treated like entertainment. A hush fell so heavy it felt like a physical thing. The crew behind the cameras froze. Even the audience stopped moving. It was as if every molecule in the room was listening. Joy stared at him, speechless. Daniel looked down at his hands, the ring twisting again between his fingers. And then he whispered the words that would send shockwaves across social media by nightfall. "I didn't come here to fight," he said, "but I won't let you turn my life into content." He looked up. Not anymore. No one moved. Not the hosts. Not the audience. Not the crew. The moment held, suspended, fragile, dangerous, as the red tally light on the camera burned brighter, catching every breath, every blink, every tremor of tension. And that was when the floor manager finally signaled the one thing everyone had been too afraid to call. Cut to commercial. But it was too late. The moment was already alive. Already burning. Already unstoppable. The commercial break signaled across the studio like a distress flare. But despite the order, the energy in the room didn't move. The audience sat stiff, whispering in fragmented bursts, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Joy Behar leaned back in her chair, shoulders rigid, staring past the cameras as though trying to regain her footing. Whoopi rubbed her temples, Sunny whispered something under her breath, and Sarah looked frozen between concern and disbelief. Daniel Radcliffe remained perfectly still. His hands were clasped, his eyes fixed on the glossy black table in front of him. Beneath the surface calm, storm clouds gathered. He could hear the crew scrambling, footsteps, mics popping, producers whispering furiously into headsets. "Do we need to escort him?" Someone muttered behind camera 3. "Don't you dare touch him," another voice hissed. "We're not escalating this." A stage manager approached cautiously. "Daniel, water? Anything." He didn't look up. "I'm fine." But everyone in the room knew that wasn't true. Joy cleared her throat, breaking the thick silence. "Well," she muttered with an awkward laugh, "that could have gone better." Whoopi shot her a glare so sharp it could have punctured the studio lights. "Joy, not now." Joy exhaled loudly, folding her arms. "I'm just saying." Sunny cut in. "You pushed him too far." Joy's eyes widened. "Oh, please. I asked questions." "No," Whoopi said. "You interrogated him." Joy scoffed. "He's a grown man. He can handle questions." Whoopi's voice dropped. "This wasn't questions. This was you going after something he clearly wasn't prepared to unpack on daytime television." The tension between the hosts thickened as producers approached the table. "Okay," one producer said, forcing a diplomatic smile. "We've got 3 minutes before we're back on air. We need to know, are we continuing the interview or do we pivot?" Everyone looked at Daniel. He finally lifted his head. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was tired. "I'll finish it," he said quietly. Joy looked surprised. "You will?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah, I'm not walking out. I don't want that." He paused. "But we're doing it differently." There was something in his voice, firm, grounded, a man reclaiming the narrative he'd lost control of too many times in his career. A producer asked timidly, "Differently how?" He stared straight ahead. "You'll see." The floor manager held up 2 fingers. 2 minutes to go. Joy reached for her water bottle, took a long sip, and then murmured, "You know, I wasn't trying to." Daniel didn't look at her. "Joy, I didn't come here to fight you." She paused. "But you did," she said softly, almost wounded. "You called me out on live TV." His voice stayed quiet. "Because you weren't listening." Joy stared down at the table, her jaw tightening. The floor manager called out, "1 minute." Audience members shifted uncomfortably, sensing they were about to return to something fragile, something volatile. The whispers rose, floating through the warm air of the studio lights. "Is he going to walk out?" "No, look, he's staying." I've never seen Joy get shut down like that. "This is wild." The hosts straightened in their seats, mics adjusted. Makeup artists hurried in with last-second dabs of powder to hide the sheen of stress. Daniel sat unmoving. At the 10-second mark, the theme music resumed, swelling lightly, as if trying to smooth over cracks that were now gaping fractures. The red tally light blinked on. The view was live again. Whoopi recovered first. "Welcome back," she said, her tone a mix of calm and warning. Before the break, things got heated. A soft, nervous laugh trickled through the audience. Daniel's gaze lifted, slow, deliberate, and he turned toward Joy. "Joy," he said, "can I start?" Joy blinked, startled by the sincerity in his voice. "I'm sure." Daniel locked eyes with her. "I get that you're doing your job. I get that this show is about tough conversations. But what you asked wasn't just tough. It was personal. And I don't think you asked it to understand me. I think you asked it to provoke something." The audience inhaled as one. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Daniel lifted a hand gently. Just let me finish. Joy hesitated, then lowered her eyes, nodding once. The moment felt raw. Human. I've spent most of my life answering questions about my childhood, he said. Questions from journalists who never met my parents, never knew anything about the years I wasn't on camera. They'd poke and I'd smile. They'd pry and I'd give a polite half-answer. Because that's what I thought I had to do. His voice softened. I don't want to do that anymore. Joy swallowed, her face softening slightly. Daniel continued. My parents didn't ask for fame. They didn't ask for me to become this symbol. They were terrified half the time. They were trying to protect me. Did they make mistakes? Of course. They were human. But I'm done pretending that talking about those mistakes is some betrayal. He looked at the camera. It's not betrayal. It's truth. The audience applauded, cautiously at first, then louder. Joy exhaled. Daniel, you're right. I pushed too hard. I went to a place you weren't ready to go. She paused. I'm sorry. The apology was unexpected. Sincere. Imperfect, but real. The audience murmured again, surprised. Sunny smiled gently. Whoopi relaxed back in her seat, and Sarah let out a small, relieved breath. Daniel gave a tiny nod. Thank you. For a moment, the studio felt warm again. Safe. But moments like that don't last long on live television. Joy cleared her throat, trying to recover her rhythm. All right, she said, attempting a smile. So let's pivot. Tell us about the new production. Daniel shook his head subtly. Actually, he said, I want to talk about something else first. Joy froze. Sunny sat up straight. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. Oh, Joy asked cautiously. What's that? Daniel breathed in deeply. I want to talk about what fame does to you. A hush fell over the room again. Daniel, Sunny said gently, you don't have to. No, he replied. I want to. He looked out toward the studio audience, then back to the table. When you're famous young, he began, you learn two versions of yourself. The one who smiles and waves, and the one who hides. The version you show, and the version you bury. The audience listened silently, hanging on each word. I buried a lot, he continued. Pressure. Expectations. Moments that scared me. Moments I didn't understand. And the world, he gestured vaguely around him, loved that version of me. The quiet one. The grateful one. The one who didn't say anything messy or complicated. Joy watched him with a strange mix of regret and curiosity. But, Daniel said, voice steadying, the older I get, the more I realize the buried version doesn't stay buried. Sunny leaned forward. Daniel, what are you trying to say? He hesitated, then spoke. I've been struggling, he admitted. Not in the dramatic Hollywood way people assume. Not addiction, not scandal, not some dark spiral. Just struggling to merge the version of me the world sees and the version that actually exists. The honesty hit the room like a quiet thunderclap. Joy's eyes softened. Her voice was fragile when she spoke next. We didn't know. He nodded. Because I didn't tell anyone. She breathed. Why now? Daniel looked down at his hands again. Because I'm tired, he said simply. A silence stretched, thick and heavy. Whoopi leaned beside him, her voice low and warm. Baby, nobody blames you for being tired. The audience murmured their agreement. Joy looked shaken, almost remorseful. Daniel, I didn't realize how close to the edge you were. He lifted his head. I'm not at the edge, he said. I'm just finally speaking from the middle. The phrase struck everyone at the table. The audience was silent. And then, breaking the moment entirely, the floor manager signaled urgently from behind the camera. They were out of time. Whoopi cleared her throat. We have to take another break, she said gently. But we'll be right back. The red tally light died. The studio breathed again. But the tension hadn't left. It had only changed shape. Joy turned to Daniel slowly. I'm truly sorry, she said, and this time there was no performative polish. Just guilt. I should have handled that better. Daniel offered her a small smile. Thank you. I appreciate it. A moment of mutual understanding passed between them, quiet but unmistakable. But not everyone was at ease. A producer rushed over, frantic. Daniel, that was, powerful, but we need to know if you're comfortable continuing. We don't want to put you in a position where... I'm finishing the interview, Daniel repeated calmly. But after we're done... He paused. The producer asked, yes? Daniel looked toward the audience, rows of faces watching with stunned fascination, and then back at the producer. I'm going to say something important, he finished. The producer blinked. On air, Daniel nodded once. Yes, on air. The producer looked concerned. What kind of something? Daniel's expression gave nothing away. You'll hear it when they do. This time, when the floor manager started counting down from 10, the feeling in the room wasn't uncertainty. It was the heavy, electric anticipation of someone standing on the edge of a truth they can no longer keep inside. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. The red light blinked on again. Daniel inhaled. The storm wasn't over. It was only beginning. When the cameras came back on, there was no theme music this time. No playful transition. No airy chatter. The silence itself became the soundtrack, thick and expectant, as the red tally light blinked awake and the nation returned to find Daniel Radcliffe sitting still as stone, his expression unreadable, his posture composed but guarded. Whoopi cleared her throat, her voice gentle but steady. We're back. And before the break, Daniel was sharing something deeply personal. We want to thank you for your honesty, and you can continue if you want to. The audience watched, leaning forward like a single organism. Somewhere in the back row, someone whispered, "This is history happening." Daniel exhaled, long and slow. Yeah, he said. There's more I want to say. Joy straightened slightly. Not hostile, not defensive, simply attentive. Almost humbled. Daniel looked around the table, then back at the camera. People talk about fame as if it's something you chase, something you fight for. But when you're a kid, when you're 11, it's not something you chase. It's something that grabs you. His voice softened, becoming a confession. And sometimes it never lets go. A murmur swept through the audience, goosebumps rippling like a wave. Sonny leaned in. Are you saying you feel trapped by it? Even now? He hesitated. Just enough that the hesitation itself felt like another truth. Sometimes, he said. Not always. But sometimes. Joy watched him, hands folded, her tone careful. What part feels trapping? The publicity? The expectations? Daniel shook his head gently. It's not the work. I love acting. I love creating things. He paused. It's the way people assume they know you. The way they think your life is a story they're entitled to edit. The audience fell into a stunned stillness. He continued. Growing up with millions of eyes on you, it shapes your brain, your decisions, your sense of safety. Even now, when I open up, people think I'm doing it for drama, or attention, or some PR strategy. He glanced at Joy. She nodded once, not defensively this time, but with remorseful understanding. Daniel went on. But the truth is, I've learned that if I don't speak for myself, others will speak for me. And they won't always get it right. Whoopi gave him a soft smile. Then speak, baby. We're listening. He inhaled deeply, gathering himself. Okay, he said. Here's something I've never talked about publicly. That sentence alone sent a jolt through the room. Phones tightened in hands. Producers stiffened. Joy's breath caught. Daniel looked at his lap, then lifted his gaze slowly. When I was about 15, I remember being on set one day, and I had a panic attack. Sarah's eyes widened. Sonny placed a hand on her chest. I didn't know what it was at the time, Daniel continued. My heart was racing, I couldn't breathe. I thought something was seriously wrong with me. But instead of telling anyone, I hid in my trailer for half an hour and then went back to set like nothing happened. He swallowed hard. Because I knew that if anyone found out I was struggling, they'd question everything. My future, my reliability, my mental stability. I was a brand before I was a person. A low, collective exhale washed through the audience. Daniel's voice tightened. I was terrified of disappointing people. Terrified of being the reason a production slowed down. Terrified of being the problem kid. Sonny wiped the corner of her eye. Daniel, that's heartbreaking. He nodded faintly. And those feelings don't disappear when you turn 18. Or 20. Or 30. They follow you. Joy asked softly. Do you still feel that pressure now? Yes, he said. But now I'm trying to face it instead of burying it. A producer off camera made a frantic slicing motion across his neck, signaling wrap this up. But Whoopi ignored him. This wasn't a segment anymore. It was a revelation. Daniel leaned forward just slightly. And there's something else. Everyone tensed. He spoke carefully but firmly. The reason I'm talking about this today is because I'm tired of being careful. Joy blinked. Careful in what way? Daniel looked at her, not angry, not bitter, just honest. Careful about protecting the image people built of me. Careful about upsetting fans. Careful about not offending anyone. Careful about not appearing ungrateful. He shook his head. But I'm a human being, not a symbol. The words hit like a quiet explosion. The audience applauded, slowly at first, then building into something warm and supportive. Daniel lowered his eyes, overwhelmed but breathing easier now. But Joy, still looking shaken, leaned forward slightly, speaking with a fragile steadiness. Daniel, earlier, before the break, I crossed a line with my questions. And I'll say it again, I'm sorry. Truly. Daniel offered her a gentle nod. Thank you. I believe you. But then Joy said something that shifted the energy again. You know, she murmured. I wonder if people will twist this too. What you're saying now. Daniel's expression darkened, not out of anger, but because he'd already thought about it. They will, he said quietly. Some will say I'm being dramatic. Some will say I'm blaming Hollywood. Some will say I'm ungrateful. Are you? Joy asked cautiously. He didn't hesitate. No, I'm grateful. I'm incredibly grateful. He paused. But I'm also haunted. The words hit like lightning. The audience gasped. Joy's breath caught. Whoopi's eyes widened in concern. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Haunted by the fear that if I'm not perfect, if I'm not the sweet, polite, harmless version of myself, then I'll lose everything. That I'll disappoint millions of people I've never met. That I'll let down my parents, my fans, the industry. He opened his eyes again. And I'm tired of carrying that fear alone. The audience was silent, riveted. Sunny whispered, You're not alone. Daniel looked at her. Something in her tone broke through the tension, warmth, empathy, a kind of maternal steadiness that softened the edges of the moment. Thank you, he said. Then slowly he turned back to Joy. And I'm not angry with you, he added. Joy blinked. You're not? No. I'm frustrated. But not angry. He exhaled. Because you're not the problem. You're a symptom. Joy frowned slightly, not offended, just confused. What do you mean? Daniel leaned back, expression firm. You're doing what the industry trained you to do. Push for the moment. The viral clip. The soundbite. It stops being about people and becomes about content. Joy looked down, words caught in her throat. Daniel continued. But I'm done being content for other people. I'm done being a headline. I'm done being a character in someone else's narrative. Whoopi nodded thoughtfully. So, what does that mean for you? Daniel hesitated. Then he said it. I'm taking a break. The audience gasped so loudly the sound echoed. Joy's eyes widened. A break? From acting? From everything, Daniel said. Press. Projects. Public appearances. All of it. I need time to be a person again. Sunny covered her mouth. Daniel, wow. Sarah whispered. Are you serious? He nodded. Yes. The studio buzzed, shocked murmurs, whispers of disbelief, hands covering mouths. The crew exchanged frantic glances. Producers panicked silently, realizing this was no longer an interview. This was an announcement. Daniel continued, I'm not quitting. I love acting. It's part of me. But I need space. I need safety. He paused. And I need it now. Joy stared at him, stunned. And you're announcing this here? Right now? Daniel nodded. Yes. Because honesty shouldn't be scheduled. Whoopi chuckled softly despite the tension. Baby, you're blowing up the internet right now. He smiled faintly, the first genuine smile since he'd walked on stage. I know. But then, just when the tension seemed ready to settle, a voice from the audience broke through. A woman in the third row stood up, trembling slightly. Daniel, thank you, she said, voice shaking. My son grew up watching you. And he struggles with anxiety too. Hearing you say this, it means more than you know. The room fell into a hush of emotion. Daniel's eyes softened. Thank you, he said, voice barely above a whisper. The woman sat down, wiping tears from her cheeks. Sunny took a breath. I think this moment is bigger than any of us expected. Whoopi nodded. It is. But the floor manager signaled again. They were out of time again. And yet no one moved. Daniel sat straighter, his gaze steady, his voice calm but firm. I have one more thing to say, he announced. The audience snapped to attention. Joy whispered. Daniel, are you sure? Yes, he said. Because this is the part one need people to hear the most. The tension rose again, sharp, electric, waiting to ignite. Whatever he was about to say next, it would change everything. And as the camera zoomed in, the red tally light glowing like a warning flare, Daniel Radcliffe opened his mouth. And the studio lights seemed to hold their breath. The cameras zoomed in so tightly that Daniel's face nearly filled the screen. The studio was so quiet it felt like even the lights had dimmed in anticipation. Every eye, every single person in that room, locked onto him. He took a breath. Slow, controlled, but trembling at the edges. "There's something I've never said publicly," he began, voice low but cutting through the silence like a blade. "And every time I've tried to say it, someone has told me to wait, or to soften it, or to say it privately, or to be careful." He looked down at his hands, then lifted his gaze again. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't sad. They were resolute. "I'm done being careful." Joy inhaled sharply. Sunny clasped her hands at her chest. Sarah bit her lip. Whoopi held her breath. The tension in the room had a pulse of its own. Daniel continued. "The truth is, being Daniel Radcliffe has been exhausting." The audience murmured softly, confused. "Not because of fame," he clarified. "Not because of fans. Not because of work. But because I've been trying to live up to a version of myself that never really existed." A flicker of pain crossed his face. "A version built for me. Not by me." The audience fell deadly silent. "I've lived my entire life," Daniel said, "being told who I am. Told what I represent. Told how to behave. Told which parts of myself to hide." He swallowed. "Told which flaws were acceptable, and which ones would ruin the brand. Someone in the front row whispered, "Oh my God." Daniel continued. "And I tried. God, I tried so hard. I tried to be perfect. Tried to be what everyone needed me to be. Tried to be polite and quiet and grateful and composed." He leaned forward, voice tighter now. "But I'm not perfect. And I'm tired of pretending to be." A hush swept through the audience, heavy, stunned, awestruck. He went on. "The truth is, I've been struggling with anxiety for years. And with feeling like I don't own my life. Like I'm living on autopilot. Like I'm standing on a stage that never goes dark." Joy's face softened with an ache of understanding she didn't even try to hide. Daniel exhaled. "And now, I'm stepping off it." "You could have heard a pin drop." Sunny whispered. "Daniel, do you mean?" "Yes," he said. "I'm going away for a while. A long while. To figure out who I am when I'm not performing for the world." Sarah blinked back tears. "That's brave." He nodded faintly. "It doesn't feel brave. It feels terrifying." The audience murmured softly, supportively. "But I need to do it," Daniel continued. "Because if I don't, I'll lose myself completely." Whoopi reached over, laying a gentle hand on his arm. "Baby, you don't owe anyone perfection. You don't owe anyone anything you're not ready to give. And you damn sure don't owe the world your sanity." Daniel's lips trembled before forming a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," he whispered. But then Joy spoke, tentative, careful, her voice unsteady. "Daniel, earlier, I pushed you into a place you weren't ready to go. You gave me more grace than I gave you." She paused, breath shaking. "But if this is your truth, then I'm glad you said it here. On your terms." Daniel looked at her gently. "I don't blame you for your questions. I blame the system that taught all of us what interviews are supposed to be." Her eyes glistened. He turned toward the audience. "And I blame myself for spending so long trying to be what people wanted instead of who I actually am." The audience applauded softly, respectfully, emotionally. Daniel inhaled, bracing himself. "And I have one final thing to say," he announced. The studio held its breath again. He let the silence stretch for a long, painful moment. Then, "I hope people understand," he said, voice almost a whisper, "that being honest about your pain doesn't make you weak. It makes you free." The room erupted. Applause crashed over the set like a tidal wave, loud, emotional, cathartic. Some audience members stood. Others cried. The host sat quietly, letting him have his moment. Even Joy wiped a tear from her eye. The floor manager waited, patient, respectful, before finally signaling for the wrap. Whoopi cleared her throat. We want to thank Daniel Radcliffe for trusting us, and trusting all of you, with this moment." She looked into the camera. "This wasn't a segment. This was a human being telling the truth. And we're grateful for that." Joy nodded slowly. "And I want to say, Daniel, thank you for holding me accountable. I needed it." Daniel gave her a small nod. Sunny leaned in. "We're sending you love." "Truly," Sarah added softly. "Take all the time you need." Daniel smiled, small, tired, but real. "Thank you." The red tally light dimmed. The show cut to commercial. But the story? It didn't stop there. Within seconds, phones lit up across the studio as audience members posted clips, reactions, shaky videos capturing their own stunned faces. Producers swarmed backstage, panicking as notifications poured in, Thousands, then tens of thousands, then millions. Twitter exploded. Instagram Reels surged. Headlines formed instantly. Daniel Radcliffe breaks down on live TV. Radcliffe calls out Joy Behar in raw on-air moment. Daniel Radcliffe announces career break in emotional confession. Shocking interview leaves the View audience speechless. Clips spread like wildfire. Some praised him. Some debated him. Some criticized the show for pushing him too far. Interviews were requested. Statements demanded. Publicists emailed each other frantically. Fans trended hashtags across the globe. But Daniel, he wasn't thinking about any of that. He was backstage, sitting alone in a quiet dressing room, staring at his hands as they trembled slightly. Liberated, terrified, but somehow lighter than he'd felt in years. A soft knock echoed at the door. Joy stepped in, tentative. "Daniel?" she asked. He looked up. She didn't say anything clever. Nothing sharp. Nothing defensive. Just thank you. He smiled faintly. "For what?" "For reminding us," she said with a shaky breath, "that people come before television." He stood and shook her hand. This time, it wasn't tense. It wasn't guarded. It was human. When Joy left, Whoopi entered next. "You good?" she asked. Daniel thought for a long moment, then nodded. "I think I will be." Whoopi hugged him tightly. "Take your break. Don't apologize for it." "I won't," he whispered. When they parted, Daniel walked out the back door of the studio. The cool air hit his face like a baptism. His first breath outside was long, full, grounding. For the first time in decades, he wasn't Daniel Radcliffe the actor. He was Daniel Radcliffe the person. He didn't look back. Not once. But the world, it wouldn't stop talking. Not for days. Not for weeks. And now it's your turn. If you're watching this right now, tell us what you think. Was Daniel right to speak out? Did Joy push too far? What part of his confession hit you the hardest? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear every perspective. And make sure you subscribe to Stage View for more powerful, cinematic breakdowns of the dramatic moments the world can't stop talking about. Because stories like this, they don't happen often. And when they do, we'll be right here to bring them to life.